The leather of Marcus Sterling's Bentley had never felt colder. He sat motionless in the parking lot of a chain diner he wouldn't normally glance at, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. Through the rain-streaked window, he could see her, Rosa Martinez, the woman who'd cleaned his penthouse for 3 years, sitting across from a man whose cruel laughter cut through the glass like shattered crystal. Marcus had stopped for gas, nothing more. He hadn't meant to see this. Hadn't meant to witness the moment when Rosa's date grabbed the cheap bouquet of supermarket flowers she'd brought and tossed them onto the floor, his voice loud enough that other diners turned to stare. In that instant, as Rosa's trembling hand reached down to gather the scattered daisies, something fractured inside Marcus Sterling's carefully constructed world. The thing about building an empire worth $8 billion is that you stop seeing people. They become functions. The woman who brings your coffee, the man who drives your car, the quiet housekeeper, who somehow always knows you, prefer your shirts arranged by color, who leaves sticky notes with smiley faces on your bathroom mirror when you've had a particularly brutal week. Marcus had noticed those notes, filed them away as a pleasant quirk, but he'd never really seen Rosa, not as a person with hopes that could be crushed in a discount diner on a rainy Thursday night. His phone buzzed. Another message from the merger team. $300 million hung in the balance, waiting for his review of contracts that sat unopened in his briefcase. Marcus silenced the phone. Through the window, he watched Rosa's date lean back, gesturing wildly while speaking to someone at another table, clearly mocking her. Rosa sat perfectly still, her shoulders curved inward like a flower closing against frost. She wore a dress Marcus had never seen before, probably her nicest. One, a soft blue that made her look younger than her 47 years. Her hair was styled with obvious care. She'd prepared for this evening with hope. Marcus knew about hope. He'd built his first startup in a garage with maxed-out credit cards, and the kind of desperate optimism only the young and foolish possess. He'd almost lost everything twice before his breakthrough. But that was decades ago, before success had insulated him from the sharp edges of ordinary life, before he'd started measuring his days in quarterly earnings and forgetting what it felt like to be diminished. The man across from Rosa was still talking, his gestures growing more animated. Other diners had returned to their meals, their brief curiosity satisfied, leaving Rosa alone in her humiliation. Marcus recognized the type, someone who'd agreed to a date out of boredom, perhaps even seeing it as entertainment, a story to tell friends, a woman he could feel superior to. $5, Marcus thought, catching sight of the faded sign advertising their dinner special. This man had brought Rosa to a $5 dinner and still found ways to make her feel small. Before he could talk himself out of it, Marcus was moving. He left the Bentley running, walked through the rain without his umbrella, and pushed through the diner's door. The smell of grease and coffee enveloped him. Several heads turned at his entrance. His Tom Ford suit cost more than some of the cars in the parking lot. But he only had eyes for one table. "Rosa," he said, and watched her head snap up, her eyes widening in mortification. "I'm sorry I'm late." Her date stopped mid-sentence, his mouth hanging open. Rosa stared at Marcus like he'd materialized from another dimension, which in a way he had. "Mr. Sterling?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Marcus, please." He turned to her date, extending his hand with the same commanding presence he used in boardrooms. "I'm an old friend of Rosa's. I got held up in traffic. I hope you don't mind if I join you." It wasn't a question. The man's handshake was weak, confused. We were just having dinner, yes." Marcus slid into the booth next to Rosa, close enough that she couldn't protest without causing a scene. He could feel her trembling. "The meatloaf here is supposed to be excellent. Rosa's been telling me about this place for months." The lie was smooth, practiced from years of navigating corporate politics, but something about it felt different. This wasn't a negotiation. He didn't have a word for what this was. Rosa's date, Marcus never caught his name and didn't care to, made several attempts at conversation before excusing himself to the restroom and never returning. They heard his car start up in the parking lot 5 minutes later. In the aftermath of his departure, silence settled over the booth like snow. "You didn't have to do that," Rosa finally said, her accent thickening with emotion. Mr. Sterling, you didn't have to— Yes, I did. Marcus looked down at his hands, at the Patek Philippe watch that cost more than most people earned in a year. Rosa, I need to tell you something. For 3 years, you've come to my home. You've taken care of my space, left those notes when you knew I needed them. You learned I don't like ice in my water. You figured out— I read the financial section before the front page and started leaving it on top. You noticed when I stopped eating the lunches I brought home from restaurants and started leaving fresh fruit instead. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. It's my job to notice. No, his voice was firm. Your job is to clean. Everything else, that's who you are. And I never thanked you, never saw you. I knew your name and your work schedule and nothing else. I didn't know you had a daughter in nursing school. Didn't know you send money to your mother in Honduras every month. Didn't know you volunteer at a literacy center on Sundays. I learned all of that in the last 10 minutes. From your phone wallpaper in the library. Tote bag you're carrying. Why are you here? She asked, and it was the most genuine question anyone had posed to him in years. Because I happened to stop for gas. Because I saw you through that window. Because that man treated you like you were nothing. And I realized I've been doing the same thing in my own way. Maybe not with cruelty, but with indifference, which might be worse. Rosa shook her head, tears spilling over. You've always been kind, Mr. Sterling. Have I? Kind is knowing your daughter's name. Kind is asking about your mother's health. Kind is seeing the person, not just the service. He paused, watching a tear trace down her cheek. I'm sorry, Rosa, for years of not seeing you. The waitress appeared, eyeing them curiously. Marcus ordered coffee and the meatloaf he'd mentioned, then looked at Rosa. Please, whatever you'd like, and not from the $5 menu. Over the next hour, they talked. Really talked. Marcus learned that Rosa's daughter, Carmen, worked double shifts while studying to become a nurse, that Rosa's dream was to open a small restaurant serving her grandmother's recipes, that she'd been saving for 15 years and was still $12,000 short, that this had been her first date since her husband died 8 years ago, set up by a well-meaning friend. I thought maybe it was time, she said softly. Carmen keeps saying I should have a life, but I think maybe I'm not ready, or maybe I'm just not meant for these things anymore. You're meant for joy, Marcus said, and meant it. What happened tonight, that wasn't about you. That was about a small man trying to feel big. When the check came, Marcus paid it along with a tip that made the waitress's eyes widen, but he wasn't done. Outside, with the rain reduced to mist, he turned to Rosa. Tomorrow I'm going to call you. Not about cleaning, about a business opportunity. I invest in startups, Rosa, restaurants included. I'd like to hear more about your grandmother's recipes and your business plan. If you have one. I have notebooks, she admitted. Years of notebooks. Perfect. He smiled, and it felt like the first genuine smile in months. Bring them to my office. Let's talk about making something happen. 6 months later, Marcus stood in a small restaurant in Queens, watching Rosa move through the dining room with natural grace, checking on customers who raved about the pupusas and tres leches cake. Rosa's kitchen was packed every night, already being featured in food blogs and local news. Carmen worked weekend shifts when not at the hospital, her nursing school tuition now fully paid. Marcus had done more than invest. He'd shown up, helped navigate permits and vendor contracts, connected Rosa with a chef friend for menu consultation, met Carmen and Rosa's mother when she visited from Honduras, became part of their lives in the same way Rosa had quietly become part of his. You changed everything, Rosa told him one evening, after the restaurant had closed and they sat sharing coffee. No, Marcus corrected gently. You changed me. You taught me that success without humanity is just numbers on a screen, that seeing people, really seeing them, is the only thing that matters. He thought about that rainy night often, how close he'd come to driving away, how easy it would have been to mind his own business, to stay in his separate world. The merger had gone through. His wealth had grown, but none of that compared to the richness of having Rosa as a true friend, of knowing Carmen and being Uncle Marcus to her future children, of understanding that the best investment he'd ever made wasn't in technology or real estate. It was in choosing, for once, to truly see another human being and recognize that her dignity, her dreams, her heart, these things mattered more than any balance sheet. Sometimes redemption arrives in the smallest moments, in a $5 diner on a rainy night, in the choice to get out of your car when every instinct tells you to drive away, in finally understanding that we're all just people, trying to matter, trying to be seen. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we get the chance to make that happen for someone else and discover in the process that we've been saving ourselves all along.